I think we're good.
Yeah. So I love this set of people on Twitter. You know, this is the thing about like when you're a content producer and you have a real job. And then all of a sudden I'm Elon Musk over here. It's like people talking shit about me on Twitter because I called some of my ex-employees that no longer work in my business schmucks. And for context, okay, you see I'm doing the hand gesture, okay? I don't think that every employee was schmucks, nor do I think that he was even vast majority of schmucks. But it's impossible to run a business without some schmucks getting in. And it really gets to me. It gets to me that people, you know, this is the thing. Like, this is the thing with fucking Twitter, is all these fucks just believe that all of a sudden they're qualified to talk about how to run a business, what it's like, all this shit. Like, and so now I'm going to become one of these guys. I'm just going to block people.
Me too. I saw that comment on my Twitter. I was like, these people are getting blocked. That's what you got to do. But hey, look, people are watching something that we made. So, so that's the good news. If you don't have trolls or haters, does it even matter? Like, you're not even doing anything.
That's it.
It could have been worse. You could have thought there was a really big bot problem and tried to buy the platform.
That's true. I didn't. At least I didn't do that. So we have to talk about this FTX. So did you hear the story about the guy losing the house? Did you hear about this?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
He lost a house? No.
Yeah. So
give us the update.
I saw it, and Andreessen Horowitz has like a WhatsApp channel.
Cool.
And I think it started because of Ukraine, the WhatsApp channel. Yeah. And there was a story of a dude on Twitter who lost his house because of FTX. This is not really in the subjects, but I'm just bringing this up as like a thing because we decided we want to talk about like founders being treated like gods sometimes, right? And this is clearly a dude. What's his name? SBF? Is that what the name is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was treated like a god for like a really long time. It's interesting because the founder of not Rippling, but it escapes me. Amzad. What's his name?
Which company?
I met him, and he's not actually that smart. He looks like he was trying to act like he was on the spectrum, when in fact he really wasn't, and he was really good at, like, for the sake putting on a show.
Right.
But the ultimate point of the story, this tweet, is that someone was like, yeah, my neighbor lost his house as a result of this FTX thing. They were like, how is this possible? How could it happen so fast? And I think what probably happened, if the story is true, is that someone just realized, oh shit, like my expenses need to be radically reduced. I had this net worth that I thought I had. Now I suddenly have this from one day to the next. But there are already repercussions, is I guess what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah. So the story here is FTX, which is, two things. It's a crypto exchange, but also has a hedge fund as well. And they had basically a run on the bank, right? There was one of their largest investors in the hedge fund, I think, heard rumblings, who also owns a crypto exchange. He had, I think it was like $2 billion that he had invested into this hedge fund, which is separate from FTX. And he heard of like these intertwined dealings, and then he was threatening he was going to withdraw all of his money, which caused a massive run on the bank. And it turns out that Sam, the founder there, they didn't have enough money to actually cover everybody's deposits. So essentially they were illiquid, and now they have applied for bankruptcy protection, I believe. It's a global, they're based in the Bahamas. They have, I think, one or two board members that are inside the company. They also took a ton of money from traditional Silicon Valley investors like Sequoia, which is, I think, of any of these big blowups, this is a new piece, right? Like we had Elizabeth Holmes that happened she didn't have any major Silicon Valley-esque investors. This is a little different.
They were so proud of that back in the day. Do you remember?
I remember all of them.
Real Silicon Valley investors didn't invest in this. And be like, not so much.
Yeah, I remember hearing the stories about I saw Elizabeth and I didn't believe it from the first piece or something like that. And they were kind of bragging that they didn't get into it. But this is a little different. And this is also, I think, in 2021 when things kind of got off the rails as far as funding goes. And there was a lot of less diligence that happened. And obviously there were some people like Sam that took advantage of that. And this is one of maybe the start of the unraveling of some of these little looser investments that 2021 provided. But that's kind of the headline of the story. I don't know what you guys' thoughts are on that.
I said it on Twitter to Albert Wanger when he posted a little bit about the crypto ecosystem, and I'll say it again right here. I have a different take. I think this is straight fraud. There's a lot of different pieces of this coming out, and I think it's too early to tell, but the Financial Times and Bloomberg did a piece yesterday on their balance sheet, and there's no real assets on the balance sheet. It's a bunch of coins that they were the only owner of, and they had assigned a value in it. It's an auditor who, if you look at the auditor, it's a name you've never heard of. The auditor on their website had their location in Decentraland, and for everyone who doesn't know what Decentraland is, it's a virtual world. So your auditor has a store in a virtual world, and you're sending everyone financials, I think, showing that you made, I don't know, $250 million in profit last year. And then when everyone looks at your balance sheet, it's a house of cards. It's you own your own tokens. You own a bunch of tokens that you're the investor in. And the only reason you're saying they're worth something is because you're the largest investor. And if you actually tried to sell them in the market, it wouldn't be worth anything. And I think I may have mentioned this on one of the other podcasts. My first job out of school was at Lehman Brothers. And so I remember watching all of this implode in real time. I had nothing to do with it. Lehman Brothers, for everyone who doesn't know, was an investment bank that went bankrupt in 2008. It also had a really bad balance sheet. I think they had real estate in New York, wind farms in India, and also wasn't worth what they were claiming it was worth. So I think this is very similar. I also think there's a good shot here people go to jail. I don't know enough.
I agree.
I've just been reading what's going on. So I think this is the only thing that's really analogous to this in Silicon Valley is Elizabeth Holmes. I'd love to know what comes out if these financial statements they were sending everyone were real, or are they totally fraudulent.
Sure.
But the fact that the auditor had a store in Decentraland definitely makes me feel real confidence in that auditor. And I don't know if
I will say,
go, Julian.
In just my experience, I have this view into other people's companies sometimes because I coach other CEOs, and there's a few people as a result of this experience that I know that ran crypto-related companies, and as we all know, a bunch of people, including people in our CEO group off to the side, that run crypto companies, and so first of all, when you're an early founder, if you're in crypto, in 2020 and 2021 or whenever, you could literally, like Joe, you could have done it if you wanted. You could have been like, I'm starting a crypto company, and just not quite like Adam Newman did with his conscious coin or whatever the fuck he called it. But you could have easily have raised $25 million for a crypto thing.
Totally.
And no one would have questioned that. They would have said, what happens in the seed stages is it relies on a web of trust. And I don't know what happened with you, Joe. I'd be curious about your experience. When we raised the round with Andreessen Horowitz last year, Andrew was like, let's do reference calls. And so he called Michael Karn.
Your partner at A16Z, Andrew Chen.
Yes, Andrew Chen at Andreessen Horowitz, our partner over there. I know, Joe, you and I share one. He called Michael Karn. He called Zach Sims at Code Academy. He called a bunch of people that are not only friends of mine, but investors of mine in some cases. And he was like, what's the thing with this dude, Julian? And at the very beginning of any business, this is what venture investors do. But at some point, the social proof lines up. such that people just start to believe in things to a degree.
Mm-hmm. Joe, what's your experience? This is now your third venture-backed business.
Yeah, I mean, the first business, it took a year to raise $1 million, and now you can raise a lot of money really quickly once you have that reputation and the social proof of what you've done in the past, and that you did it in a credible, honest way, even when things didn't go well. The doors stays open, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting now with this, another case of what appears to be massive fraud in our broader space. Like, how does this change? Does it really change going forward? Because Andrew did the same thing with me. He called a bunch of people, and I spent meaningful hours on the phone with people, like really digging on, like, is this somebody? I've heard good things, but is this somebody we want to trust? Like, is that good enough? Or where does it go in the future for the founders coming up, or all of us doing our next companies, or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
But isn't this a little different situation? So when FTX, when they raised their most latest round with investors like Sequoia, that was a series, they raised like $600 million, right? Yeah. So this definitely just not on reputation. There had to be, well, you'd hope that there had to be some sort of diligence, and as you mentioned, like some of these auditors, and based in Bahamas, there's no real board. I don't know. It seems like the frothiness kind of took over a lot of like
what you're saying is
standard
right.
Diligence.
What you're saying is true. At the same time, there's a reason. Y'all must have seen, or a portion of the audience. There are 8 people listening, not instead of 5 from last.
No, we almost have 100 views.
Okay, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So in that Silicon Valley episode where
5x
puts his dick on the table, you could watch the episode if you like. It's like the ballsier, the more arrogant you become.
That's true.
With a venture investor too. I would say that that's not quite true. There's a degree of parity to it, but there's also a lot of truth to it, where the more confident one becomes, the more respect you almost like get from the venture investor to a degree. In fiction, like Silicon Valley, they exaggerate it, but in fact, this whole story about the dude playing a League of Legends during a Sequoia Capital partner meeting really plays into that mystique, and people want to, Valar was one of Peter Thiel's funds that invested in Breather back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And James, there's only 2 partners there. One of the guys is in the PayPal mafia, Andrew McCormick. The other guy is James Fitzgerald. They're both people from Thiel Capital or various funds. And we were at the closing dinner, and the dude is like, "Oh, and how old are you, by the way?" And I think I'm 37 at that time. I say 37. And there's this shock on his face because I look younger than I
do.
And he shows like a kind of real disappointment that I'm not like a whiz kid. You get what I mean? Like one of these 25-year-old people that don't know what the fuck they're doing, and they're just shooting their mouth off, and they're just randomly a genius. And like people really want to believe in those people. They love that type of investment. If they can make it, they're like, this kid is a genius. And if you play into that, as this dude SBF did, probably it kind of like has a disproportionate like effect on the power that you have.
I did this for my last company. I played this to a T. I played up. So I was first time venture backed company, and to raise my B, I would just talk like, and also I thought of it as well. Like we talked last episode, you feel like you're God. And at that point I really did. We were one of the hottest companies out in Silicon Valley. I was living in San Francisco, had all this hype. And then I would just like even believe it, but also it would come off like that. I was able to, at the end, so we raised a $50 million Series B, which back in the day was just ginormous. Mm-hmm. John Doerr from Kleiner was the one who led it. But like I let him to believe that Mark Andreessen was competing for the deal, and then it just like the valuations just got so high, and I was talking like I knew everything, which at the time I thought I did, but also I'm in this industry, which is logistics, and now I've learned a lot more about this industry. And at that time, talking like now, I'm looking back at my younger self, is like, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. Like, I didn't know how important, what is like the capex? How much should we invest in? What should be the payback time for that? Like, how efficiently should we be running the operations? Like, what are the real pressure points in that business versus like, we have users, they're using it, they love us, and we're just growing, which for some businesses, if you're a pure software business or a consumer internet business, that's really all that matters. But I didn't really know a lot of those things, and I'd kind of just brush it along like, oh, we'll figure all that stuff out. But I played into exactly what you're talking about, Julian. They want the whiz kid, kind of doesn't know a lot of things, but like they kind of being naive is like kind of a benefit, because I also do believe that to a certain extent. I think being naive into going into an industry, a lot of people that do know the industry really well, they may not actually go into it, and then you just kind of figure it all along the way. So it does make sense why they would do that, but there is that type of investor, especially first-time founders, that people and venture investors do want to invest in.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also risk tolerance. When you're younger, you're willing to go the distance. And I think everyone here has significant risk tolerance. Look at this group of people. Joe, I think you're doing your third, Julian second, Kevin, you're second, I'm on my second. And I think we're not young people. And at the same time, we also have no fear of doing this again and again and again. And I think that's what people really love.
We just proceed regardless of the, it's really what happening.
We have figured out a way to hide the fear and put it in the deep, dark depths of our belly.
That's it. Yeah, we compartmentalize very well. That's it, exactly.
I think my risk tolerance is actually increased, because now, after being having such a high flying company, like I have so much more to prove, and I'm willing to risk like even more than I was like as a younger version of myself. But VCs do look for pattern matching. So can you say that younger founders have a higher risk tolerance? Probably.
Joe, I was going to ask you, did you feel that in the days of Klout? I remember Klout, at least in my days, because I was in social back in the day writing books and being a influencer in 2006 or something. Klout was the biggest thing on the earth. Did you feel that internally?
Yeah, it was wild. Yeah, this is like a thing I built the first version of by myself in my bedroom. I had never done anything that anyone cared about. So to put it out, and it hit almost right away, like, lightning in a bottle, just like, and it was crazy. Like, celebrities pinging us about their Klout scores, people coming to the office, just like, we had 3 years where every day was our biggest day.
Explain to the people that are under 40.
Oh, right. Yeah, this is like, might as well be GeoCities at this point. Yeah. So like, in the early days of social, and this is 2008, Facebook had just broken out of colleges, Twitter's not even close to mainstream. But people were starting to think that these platforms are important and starting to put more time into them. But there was no way to know if you were doing well. Did anyone care about the content you were creating? How do you make sense of who you're running into on these places? And I had this weird experience. I had jaw surgery. My jaw was wired shut. I basically was reliant on Twitter and Facebook in like late 2007. And that was my only form of communication. And my background was an engineer. So I built a way to understand influence on first Twitter, but then adding all the social networks. So Klout was a 1 to 100 score of how influential people were across every topic on social media. It was like, I mentioned a lightning bolt in terms of users, but also press. We were like,
I remember
the coolest, our most horrible company to ever exist, like on a daily basis. So it was like being in a hurricane for many years. And
I have to say your story about, because you need an origin story, right? It's very clear that you need a proper origin story as a superhero or supervillain and as a founder when pitching. your story about your jaw being wired shut, which
Love
I'm
it.
hearing for the first time, is the best origin story ever for coming up with a company and then fundraising for this company. Did people love this story at the time, or is it just me now?
I mean, I felt like I was going to get sponsored by like the American Dental Association. It was just like every, it worked so well. And I had the picture in the deck of me with my jaw wired shut.
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
So
is this a real origin story? Like
it's like, I mean, like, cause Joymode and you concoct origin stories from a lot of, influences, and you got to try to make it coherent. But this was like, I was, just an engineer, had this jaw surgery, was stuck in my apartment in New York City for 3 months on a lot of drugs because of the pain stuff, and just like built this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like how it started.
And so the origin story is, so Kevin, yours is you were an eBay power seller,
That's right.
And so when you were 15 or something, I don't know why and so Andy, what's your Nanit origin story?
Okay. Oh God. So the Nanit origin story is I was introduced to my founder. He had been a father. My co-founder. He had been a father. He had built a bunch of algorithms on his child. He had a PhD in computer vision, and we had looked very carefully when I was a VC at Dropcam, and I always believed there was a missing analytics layer of video. And so the two of us started talking. This was 2014. A friend of ours that we all know, Hunter Walk, I remember saying to me, computer vision doesn't work and will never work. And I teased.
This is the second time you sound very angry. This is the second time you've mentioned this.
No, actually, I'm not angry at all. I think it's just super funny, and I like to make fun of him for it. And it's just amazing when you can when people say that to you, and you can prove people wrong. And we started the company off of that, and it was a belief that there was going to be this revolution in deep learning and in the way we can build analytics, and we ended up being right. And that's my origin story. Julian, what's yours? I mean, tell me about yours. I don't know about why did you want to hang out in cafes so much?
It's someone came to me. There's this chief product officer of BetterUp yesterday, and they're the largest coaching kind of marketplace where they sell to organizations, and they have thousands of coaches on the back end essentially providing it.
Did you meet Prince Harry yesterday?
I did not meet Prince Harry. He's not the chief product officer. He's the chief something else. But everybody brings this up. But this woman, Gabriella, I'm randomly in meetings. This happens to me regularly, and it's a nice blessing. It's a good thing. And she was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm a huge Breather fan." I'm just like, "Oh, thank you. It's so nice." And the experience that most people have with it is a little bit like that, where they used it when someone else booked it. But mine that I used to tell was I had never worked in an office. I had never needed one. I'd never had a regular job. I went straight from working in a call center to being an influencer on Klout to all these other things. And so I'd never had an office experience. And I said, why isn't there another place for me to go other than cafes? And I was like, I just didn't have this office experience in my mind. And I said, well, I should invent a place like this, and I should be able to unlock it from the phone. Uber, it was the era of Uber and all these things where you could do things with your phone. And magically that worked. But back to Joe's point, it takes 6 months to raise your first $1 million. And then the next time you do it, you're just like, oh, yeah. And so I continue to wonder whether we're immune to all this stuff that's going on, or whether the ecosystem is just collapsing underneath us. And the next time that we have to go out and raise venture financing, whether we're still going to be okay, if you imagine the company's all right, or whether we're also going to have an insanely bad hard time.
Right. There's this thing you always hear about venture is you can only lose your money once. But if a deal goes sideways like this, they lost $200 million to Sequoia, that's nothing.
3% of their fund, they actually came out with that to their LPs. Of that one fund, it's nothing.
But if it works, it's kind of infinite upside. So we hear about a story like FTX that blows up, and everyone's like, well, how can you be so dumb? And so many red signs. But how many deals do they do where you're like, this doesn't look great, there's some weird thing, but it doesn't blow up and it goes well, and like we never hear about it because it was fine. Like, I have no idea. I'm just curious, like, do you guys think there's a lot more companies that, in retrospect, there's red signs, but there are red flags, but they ultimately are fine?
It's a great question, Joe. And from the inside of a business, right, a legitimate business, and I don't believe that we've ever committed fraud.
Why are you making hand quotations when you say legitimate? No, I'm joking.
Legitimate, quote unquote, business. When we talk about a business, I mean, I've raised a lot of money in my history. The reality is you're not committing fraud, and you're certainly not lying. You're telling the truth, but at the same time, you are creating reality inside of the business. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not one of them. I'm actually like I'm really almost pathologically telling the truth all the time. Sometimes it really hurts me, actually. But I will say that at the same time, there's probably some people that are on the opposite side. I was in a commercial real estate tech for a long time, and people would talk to me about Adam Neumann being a fraud. And I would be like, I don't know if Adam Neumann is a fraud or if she's just an amazing pitch dude, right? Like 100x better than I am. So it's hard to tell whether these people are, and maybe that's my problem, is like I'm pathologically truthful. So I assume other people are kind of like me when in fact they're not. They're fucking liars. And so I don't really know whether someone is really fraudulent or they're working their best to create the reality of the business the same way that I kind of was.
So it turns out in Adam Neumann's case, it definitely was not a fraud. This is now, he was pushed out of the business. They went public. Definitely not at the same valuation than Adam Neumann got it to, but it is a thriving business. I'm a customer, a happy customer of theirs. So it's definitely not a fraud, but obviously pump that piece up. I think, Joe, to your point, my perspective on this is that the industry, like the VC industry as a whole, is like the returns are better than ever. Like to kind of taking away the last like 6 months or so of like the public market, which has obviously been down, but the overall like SaaS is bigger than anybody ever expected. Everybody's using computers for everything. There's so many industries, including logistics, which I may be in, that are relatively untouched by technology. So I think that that's what's driving all of these returns. I do think that there are going to be some systemic problems to industries like crypto. I think that is one. There were so many, like, there's every new, you turn on the CNBC and there's another, like, crypto.com is now like everybody's withdrawing all their funds. They have so many different dealings and all this. I think there is a house of cards. Maybe it's in part of the crypto ecosystem, but I think in the broader like VC tech ecosystem, I think it's stronger than ever. That's my point of view. Will there be more diligence? Yes, there will be. There's less people are writing less checks. So it's always gone, like, there's always been like a tilt towards the founder or the VC. It definitely is more towards the VC now. So there's going to be a lot more diligence, and it'll probably go back and forth and back and forth. But I think the overall, like, your point, Joe, like, you could only lose 1x your money, but like you could potentially 100 times it. Like, that's never going to go away. And so you're always going to have the, people, founders included, that are going to be chasing these like insane outcomes. So I think venture as a whole is a very healthy asset class, and something that if you do want to build a really big business, I think that you should take venture capital. However, not everybody should take venture capital. I think it's a huge mistake. There's a lot of businesses that are not run on venture capital that are very, very successful. But if you do want to be a market leader, a global player, whatever that is, and you see a way that you could use venture capital to accelerate your business, you definitely should.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to sit here and I'm going to define what I think a fraud is. And I'm going to sit here and say, I'm going to start with WeWork. WeWork was not a fraud. WeWork was a company that was spending way too much money. was a company that had related party transactions. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, Adam Neumann owned some of the real estate, and he was also renting the real estate. But again, it wasn't a fraud. The board approved everything that Adam Neumann did. He told them what he was doing. The board approved it. There were board minutes. What happened was Adam Neumann tried to go public, and then public market investors, this is absolutely, utterly absurd, and the VCs and the board had to ask him to leave. Otherwise, they were going to lose all their money. That's not fraud. Theranos is fraud. Fraud is when you sit there and you make up the revenue numbers. And I think that's my definition of fraud. I'm not a lawyer. But I think everyone here knows some company where they've cooked the books. I can think of another one in the crypto space off the top of my head. I'm not an investor, but I have heard they cook the books and they lie about the revenue numbers. I'm not going to say the name.
Who is it?
I will not say the name because on the off chance I'm wrong, it's not my place. They have large investors, let them deal with it. But anything beside, so cooking the books, giving fake numbers, that's fraud. And then everything else is, I don't know what the founders do. I'm honest to a fault. I came from VC. I'm probably the wrong person to be telling these outlandish stories. I remember doing all the diligence. But when you Theranos is fraud. Looks like FTX is probably fraud. No one here has ever committed fraud.
Yes. It suggests that you went through some deals because you probably saw. I see what the analysts do. You were an analyst at Northwest.
I was an associate. So one step above. Associate.
One step above.
And it was Norwest. So just correcting the name.
It was Norwest.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so you saw sketchy things that you, I'm sure, thought were false, right? During the time that you were there.
We've done. I had a diligence call with a company that ended up selling for $800 million. That ended up getting a Series A backed by Excel. Where we called the old CEO, where he and the co-founder worked, and the old CEO said to us, "Hey, we fired him for hacking the personnel files, getting on the drive, and literally looking up everyone else's salary. We had proof he did it. We asked him to leave. We didn't fire him for cause." We took a step back and we said, okay, that's not the type of person we can be business with. And then about a week later, Excel did the deal. I don't know if they ever called that person. My guess is they just didn't call the same person we called. And that ended up being a very successful company that you all know the name of, and I will not say the name. And it got acquired. It built a great product. Those people were known as very honest in their next company, and who knows? But the second you start hearing about this stuff, it's an area you don't want to touch. That being said, the Bahamas, the U.S. Virgin Islands, the Isle of Man, Panama, all these incorporation places were always on the edge of finance. And the fact that like a company like FTX felt the need to move to the Bahamas, that's a red flag. That was where Pablo Escobar kept his money. That and the Cayman Islands.
There's a combo. This brings me to the domain name space. It's one of the few places where before I did any of this stuff, I was a super affiliate for GoDaddy. It was one of the first things I ever did online. And you can make a shocking amount of money doing this. And so, so I learned a lot about the domain name space. And all of the people not all of them, a shocking amount of these people are in Vancouver for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Wild.
And when they're not in Vancouver, in Canada, they're in the Bahamas, and they own like 300,000 domain names. There's a very famous dude that did this. And what happened is he got all of his domain names, and he bought them all during the dot-com crash. And everyone was like, the internet is a scam. And he went out and he bought, he's very famous for owning rumcakes.com, like literally just generic .coms, an endless number of generic .coms that each get like 5 visits a month. And he just puts ads on top of them, and then boom, 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 boom. And he was making like $100 million a year or some crazy
Jesus.
number. Okay. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is because the tide is going out on crypto right now, exactly in the same way. There's like fraud and those other things. Everyone's like, there's no use case. You've heard that 100 times this week. There's no use case. Everyone's pulling out. And so the real question is who is. I had a dollar cost averaging that I was doing on a few crypto things, and I actually stopped it like a couple months ago. And now I'm like, should I just keep buying in just tiny amounts? And you end up being the guy who owns $300,000 domain names at the end, or it's just like fuck it and be like everybody else and just be like forget about that and go out and build a real business for real.
Here's the interesting thing about the internet and when it sold off in the dot-com crash, and here's the difference in crypto, and I don't know the answer to this question. When the dot-com sold off, there were a lot of businesses being made. Amazon was selling books. They weren't profitable. Akamai was selling hosting. It wasn't profitable. And so on and so forth. These were businesses. They were real businesses. They were light on revenue. They probably didn't have the greatest financials, but they were doing what they said they were doing. The interesting thing about crypto, and I don't know the answer to should you be buying or should you not, I've never really been that into crypto. What's the use case? What's that killer use case for it?
I parroted exactly what you just said, and you're here throwing it back in my face.
Where did you parrot it?
I just literally now said, what is the use case? What is the use case?
Sorry, I'm a little tired today then.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on.
Go on.
And so you got to have a use case. Helium's the best thing I've ever seen as a use case. I don't know the answer. Let me ask a different question. Who's honest in crypto? I feel like the Coinbase folks are very honest.
They are.
I feel
public,
like they're incredibly honest.
They have to be.
I don't know who. I feel like the Circle people are pretty honest.
I have no idea. You don't know what's happening underneath the covers.
I'm not invested in any of these companies. I'm going to say that as a disclaimer right now.
I will say, I feel like my Wild West days are behind me as an entrepreneur. I remember spamming MySpace pages in 2005 or something, right? And
Jill remembers you too doing that.
Right? Yeah,
I was there.
That's what you did. So, and so I just feel like my days of doing crazy stuff are behind me. And now I just want to run a legitimate business and not look over my shoulder and is someone watching? I just want to run a business with good people that I like. I've become a super boring entrepreneur, but I always, even the mystique, as to earlier, the mystique of the whiz kid who made $100 million at the age 25 or whatever. I am falling into that mystique myself. I'm like, but maybe there's more, and I'm not seeing it. And I don't know. This is age, I guess. It's weird to say.
No, not necessarily. So I will definitely say that I'm a little different. So I am using. So I've been in the logistics industry now for a decade. That's not where I started my career. But now I know things that other people don't. And I am taking that and I want to turn all of those learnings into a massive company. And I also wanted to destroy all of my shitty competitors by having a better product for customers, by truly solving their needs. In my industry, because there's a lot of really high switching costs that people don't have to be really good actors. And that just drives me crazy. I want to just destroy my competitors and be the best product. And also in doing that, creating a massive business. I am not a passive, let's do all this safe things and all of this. But I want to be strategic. I will not be going and blasting MySpace pages or not because I wouldn't do that, but just because it doesn't make any sense. But I think that I actually have even more of a sense to want to be successful in a big time way than I did before with my previous company. But I'm more quiet than I was before about this.
So, Kevin, I think everyone here has done pretty rational, real businesses. Joe, I don't know this, and I'm going to speak for you. I think Klout was a SaaS business at the end. Is that right?
Not even.
Yeah. So we had, subscription revenue on our data. And then we had campaign business around, basically influencer campaigns.
Kevin.
But we were doing more than 10 million in revenue. Like it was like a real thing.
Yeah. I mean, like you were selling stuff. Kevin,
Yeah.
I think you said it yourself, your business didn't have great unit economics, but you had a product that people paid for, and maybe you charged a little too little for it. Julian, you also had a product that people paid for, and I don't know, you had a pandemic that hit you, and you may have also had bad unit economics. And I remember going to a holiday party and telling people that I made baby monitors, and people would look at me like, "What is wrong with you?" And like, people have said to me, "Do you make money doing that?" Do you know what that's like?
Do you get respect among your friend circle? I just need to know, like, because I get none.
Now I do, because they all have kids. Now I get it everywhere, but everyone used to just laugh at me. Like, what are you doing with your life? And now I'm trying to build Vowel because I truly believe that folks like us who are running companies that are distributed, where people are all over the world, that we should make information searchable and shareable. And that's why I started it, dealing with some of the problems of running Nanit distributed. And so I think everyone here, we're the wrong people to comment on these the crazy companies, because everyone here is a crazy little story, but they're all real businesses at the end of the day. Joe's selling data, Kevin's selling shipping, and Julian was selling space.
Joe, was there a period where you were raising without a business model, and it was just like, it was Klout, people used it, and we're not sure what we're going to do, like Foursquare or whatever?
It was clear that there could be a business there. Like every form of broadcast media had been measured. Whether we looked like Nielsen or we looked like something totally different.
Right.
The bet was that people were now broadcasters, and if you could measure that, there was value there. Was the valuation we got like rational to the revenue we were raising? Like, that's a fair question.
Right.
We raised at a $200 million valuation with, doing $1 million in revenue or something crazy, like at some point.
And that was in what year?
2011.
Wow.
That didn't happen then.
That did not happen. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and we had term sheets at twice that. So, I mean, I don't remember the exact number, but it was in that kind of magnitude. So there was revenue. There was like a rational business that could be built. Was there a rational decision on valuation? Probably not. But flipped the other way. Like it was just a different world when we did it wasn't even called a seed round. It was called a series. It was our series A was, 1.5 on 3 million.
Wow.
So, we did 1.5 on 3 million, and then 8 on 15, and then 30 on 200. It was like a very crazy.
I think many of us have been in this thing, and I want to ask it specifically. This 1 on 200. Sorry, it wasn't 1 on 200, but it was basically 200x revenue. Breather hit a 250 that I was able to negotiate, but looking back on it, I was caught in, and someone actually called it to me. They said, "You're in the post-money trap." And I said, "What does that mean?" I had never heard that expression before. And it means the next round is going to be so much harder because of the valuation that you've raised at. Kevin, I don't even need to ask you. I'm sure you were in it. Joe, I have a feeling that now you are in it. And I know that I was in it. You are so tempted by high valuations when you're an entrepreneur. And you hear someone else is raised at this crazy valuation. I explicitly, looking back at it now, I actually kind of navigated myself into it. I didn't need to have a 250.
Same here.
And I wanted it.
Me too.
I got it. And
Yeah.
it made my life harder afterwards.
We made hundreds of mistakes. All of them could be fixed except raising too much money at too high of a valuation.
Wow. What a statement.
That's a great statement. That, it's almost impossible to come back from that. Your expectations are set way too high. Trying to do anything like raising a down round, you lose so much momentum with the company, other investors, externally, customers, all these things. It really puts you in a tough position. And I think that's definitely a learning that I have going into what we're building now.
Yeah, everything got way less fun.
Yes.
It was
Board
super
meetings less
painful.
fun.
Yeah. A lot less fun. And then you start doing things that are negative for the business.
Yes.
Because you're just trying to like show signs of life and, speed yourself into like that actual valuation. But it just really, really is such a way to self-inflict damage to your company, your own kind of life, like everything.
So
So
we're
true.
talking.
When you
Go, Julian.
go ahead, Andy. I was going to ask you first of all whether it had ever happened to you, and then Joe, you wrote a post with an amazing quote in it. Andy, I'm gonna bring that back to you, Joe. I want to ask you about that quote. But Andy, did you ever get stuck in this trap as a
I have
business?
not, honestly.
Did you know about
Yes.
it when you were a VC?
I knew about it as an operator because I was a VC. There was a
There we
rule
go.
of thumb way back when I was a VC. Don't ever raise at more than like 7 times forward revenue. I mean, that went out the window 10, 15 years ago. But that was the rule of thumb. I think was Mark. I had first heard it from Mark Lohr, diapers.com, and that's how they ran diapers. And that was an e-commerce rule of thumb. And the reason why was e-commerce business had always traded from 1 to 3 times revenue, nothing more ever.
Right.
Zappos was 1.5 or 1 3/4, and people thought that was high. And the reason is most of these are low margin businesses at the end of the day. And along the way, all this stuff went out the window. I think Casper did it one time at 5 times forward, and they blew. It was the highest comp anyone had ever seen in e-commerce. I've never done it. I haven't fallen into this trap. I don't have a lot to contribute. I knew the rules and I tried to avoid them. I tried to build a very rational business, and I've tried to do it multiple times. And I'm one of those ones who focuses on unit economics a lot. And so I'm probably a little bit different than the rest of this group on this topic.
I think you probably came to founding companies being able to look at businesses the way a VC looks at them. And actually, even though people like to make fun of VCs, I have come to the conclusion that they actually are, despite everything that we just said, that actually they're super sophisticated business evaluators. And you want to believe the hype on Twitter, like, yeah, fucking VC brags, like all this shit, they're morons. But actually, especially at, I don't know at the partner level, I can't say, because like it's people that are there from legacy generations and things like that. But at the analyst level, those people are machines. That's the conclusion that I've
Yeah,
come to.
I mean, like we had slides in our seed deck and our pre-seed deck of this is what the unit economics will be. This is what we have to do. When we went out and negotiated with our first manufacturer, we asked for net 90, which was actually utterly insane. And for anyone who doesn't know, that means we have to pay 90 days later than they give us the product. We ended up settling on net 60. And that was such a gift because it basically gave us 60 days for pay, and it ended up financing a lot of the inventory at the very beginnings. We messed up a lot of other stuff, but we knew the rules of Unity. We knew what our unit economics had to be. And we may have not have gotten there at the very early days, but we knew what we were trying to cost down at every step of the way. So that's what we were good at. We made every ever mistake on the book. Don't get me wrong. Everyone does. But we knew we started with an LTV to CAC ratio. We started with what we thought our gross margin had to be. And in general, I've run businesses like that. And I always sit there and think about that. That was helpful.
So it was different because we were in a software business. Joymode was much more like that, where we really capped the ROI and LTV and unit economics, where Klout was just like, we were growing so fast. Like every day was our biggest day for years. And
Wow.
and there was no, we spent $0 ever on acquisition. There really was the cost to run, it was a data API was our biggest kind of revenue piece. We had some campaigns. We had like 4 people on the like sales and account management team generating, high single digits of millions in revenue. Like it was there wasn't like a unit economics problem. It was just a like overshot on how fast we could keep growing.
Yeah.
Can we the last close out here, the last 10 minutes, pivot to this other topic that we had, the Sahil Mighty going down.
It was a great topic.
Yeah, I think that's definitely for second and third time entrepreneurs. So the news was Sahil, who was previous founder of Mixpanel. So he started a company called Mighty, and what they did was they were basically a virtual machine of Chrome. So his big thesis, I believe, was that everybody is running on the web, and to do that inside a computer, especially how bloated Chrome has become, how slow it's become, people have so many tabs, that to basically put that into a supercomputer in the cloud and then just stream over all of the video and basically be a virtual machine for your browser. So he worked on this for about 3.5 years. He's also kind of been building in public too. So I don't know him, but I've been following him along the way. But he just announced that they're stopping work on it. And they are, which is sad. And they're now pivoting towards something else in the, I guess, generative AI. I don't really know what their new company is doing, but to just see, for me, it was just seeing that, and I could just like resonate so much for somebody who's gone at it again, failing, and then they're going back at it again. But also, it sounds like it with existing investors' capital as well. They still had 50% of the capital in the business, and so they're basically starting this new business with the existing team as well. So thoughts around here.
Was Mixpanel successful? I think the answer is yes, right?
Yes.
Okay. It's got to be. I have a friend of mine, Aidan Nullman, who actually works at Mighty. I don't know how big their team is, but he was so excited to work there. He was unbelievably excited. I bet all the engineers love the idea, and
yes,
it's technically complex and all these other things. You got to give it to a dude who was working in public, because like we talked a couple of times about Nikita Beer and how his gas app, and he's like talking about how sexy his thing is right now or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's easy to write and build in public when your thing is working, but to continue to build in public when it's not. Justin Kahn had a similar thing. I'd love to talk about that some other time with his insane lawyer company.
Atrium.
Yeah. What was it called?
Atrium.
Atrium, yeah, that's it. So it's you got to give it to a guy to be really humble about his thing and to say something. My instinct would have just been like, just to not, and then just quietly maybe pivot to some other thing, tell the investors, obviously the team, But I don't know if I would have posted it on Twitter. I don't know if I could have done it.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, we all checked out his new company, right? And none of us, does anyone here actually know him besides following him on Twitter? Yeah, yeah. I signed up for his new company.
I thought it was...
Bill, it helped him generate attention, but clearly attention didn't solve the Mighty problem, right?
Mighty's hard,
right.
Folks. Mighty's a really difficult product to build. He's basically building a VM in the cloud to then go stream it all back to you. And at the end of the day, you're basically competing with Apple's improvements on their silicon. Because as the M1 comes out, the M2 comes out, I think there'll be a 3 and a 4 and a 5. You need Mighty less and less. On top of it, you have to build a browser. You have to get to feature parity. And feature parity is really tough. And take it for somebody who's building in the real-time communication space. Real-time is really, really, really difficult. The internet was not built for real-time. And I really respect him for what he built. It was a pretty good product. And I hope he does really well in the next one.
Feature parity is such a hard thing. If you've never
it's so hard.
If you've never worked in something that requires feature parity, practice before it ever built a full-featured suite, built a chat app. And only when we built the chat app did we realize, holy shit, the standard for chat is so high today in 2021, 2020. It's like so many things need to work. It needs to be so clear. You know, hard press does this thing. Like there's all these standards that Apple has set up, that fucking WhatsApp has set up. It's the same thing with the browser. And you gotta respect a guy for going at a hard thing. My instinct would have been go after a market that we know exists. Instead, he went after a market that was completely out of left field the second time, which is incredibly daring.
And also, he did get a lot, like early on, because I've been following him since he started this. He got a lot of hate as far as like, why would you do this? Chrome is like okay, and like I'm sure that he had the aspiration. Well, I'm guessing here, like his aspiration was to build the next web browser somehow that was going to be in the cloud, and it was probably going to hook up to email and calendars and everything would be whatever. That's my guess there. But one of the things that one of the reasons that I wanted to bring this up is that, and which is one of the reasons I don't criticize anybody that at least publicly that people are actually building, like what's the Roosevelt's the man in the arena speech, right? Like there's going to be a lot of critics that are going to have a lot of opinions, and that's what they are. But you have to respect the person that's out there building, and not only is this person building, but now he's pivoting to something completely different. Maybe they have a lot of learnings, and also taking the rest of investors there, and he's just staying in the arena, continuing building. I have utter respect for people that continue to do that. He didn't go the VC route. He definitely could have done that as well. He's still building. I love builders. And he took on a really hard problem, and they found that they couldn't solve it in the way that I'm not sure why they couldn't solve it, if they didn't have product fit, if it was too expensive, or what the actual reasons were. But he's back at it, and I have nothing but respect for people that do that.
I think we all really respect him. He tried a real hard tech problem. He built in public, and he went for it. And that's what this industry is about.
Yeah.
There's no fraud here. He's honest. I mean, like, I don't know him. I assume he's very honest. And, like, I think we're all talking about him with admiration, even though it didn't work. And
Sure.
we all feel like we know him because we follow him on Twitter, and none of us have ever actually met him or interacted with him. And I hope you reach out to me, Sahil, if you listen to this show, because I think what you did is absolutely incredible in such a hard domain. And I mean, I'm trying to do it with Vowel, with real-time communication. And I hope your generative AI company is completely successful. And it looked pretty cool.
What do you guys think? I've seen that founders kind of go one or two ways. Typically, it's like continue building, either when they're successful or not, or go into VC, or also both at the same time. You've seen some actually a parallel company to Sahil's that somebody raised like a $30 million venture fund, and I saw the features slow down possibly as a result. What do you guys think on all the different options that the founders have these days?
I don't know. I'll tell you what I was compelled by, because I had those options, right? I could have started a little fund. I could have built again in real estate. I could have, I could have built a hospitality business. I could have any number of different things. But I found that there was something to bring it back to the schmucks that we were talking about at the very beginning of the thing. I found that there was a unique density of talent that existed in venture that you actually can't find in other places. I haven't worked in every industry, but at Breather, and today at Practice, it's also true, I work with some of the smartest, most dedicated, hardworking people I've ever met in my whole life. And I have for me, I have a very high standard. And so that's really compelling. That not only that, but I have an ability to fundraise. And I was like, well, I can raise and get this type of person together. And like, how exciting is that? And what I had noticed is when you get a company to a certain scale, even to mighty scale, you can really help people in a way that you care about. That was just so attractive to me. And, you know, I'm past 40. I used to think about, the idea of retiring at 40. I have a Reddit post open somewhere in my tabs, right? About somebody who retired at 40. In reality, I tried retiring. I tried retiring for like a year. It was not that interesting. And I was like, well, I'm going to go build something. And so I might keep doing that, which is weird because I never thought I would be that type of person.
Joe, what got you to go from Joymode to your latest company?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the not knowing better, and like I just love to build. Kevin, you said something earlier of, you know, you've spent 10 years in this industry and you want to apply your knowledge. And, you know, having gone through a couple startups now, I want to apply what I've learned. And I feel like it would be almost disrespectful to
Love that.
those lessons to not apply them. So I'm still hungry. I don't know better. And I can't imagine not building.
Love that. Is that a great way to end?
I think
It's
there's
a great
something
way to
wrong
end.
with all of us.
All right.
Yeah.
There may be, or there's not, and we're doing something that we love.
Well, I literally can't get a job. Like, no one's offering me fucking some other shit. I'm not going to be a VP at fucking Shopify.
Julian, you're
No
going to
one's
curse
fucking
them out
calling
on day
me.
one.
All my
No one's
not.
calling you.
they just, nobody fucking calls me.
You swear too much
I
for
have to.
Canada.
and that that must be it. That must be it. Okay, Kevin.
All
play-
right. Episode 4 in the books.
Yeah, great chat.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening. Subscribe to all of our different channels we're on.
Keep the browser open.
Keep the browser open. All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, yeah, we keep it real and we bring you the facts. It's the Second Time Founders podcast. Talking tech news, the show is a must. Not some billionaire trying to sell you their book. We coming from a real place, plenty ups and downs. Got some insights, join the discussion now. We being honest and raw, giving you real talk. We've been at the bottom and made it happen and much more. The Second Time Founders podcast. More building, less talk.